All right, so I've started the recording. We've been conversing here for a little bit, but for the purpose of uh, wherever this video ends up, we'll just do a quick introduction. So I'm Caleb Lape, and I run Rails Quest, and this is Justin Zimmerman, who is the first and only person so far who has gone through that sort of mentorship program, such as it is. So, Justin, I'll just give you the floor real quick to give a quick intro of yourself and how you found Rails Quest.
Sure. Well, first, I'm glad to be the first one through Rails Quest. I initially found you on Twitter. I think you had commented on something a thread that I was reading, and then it took me to your profile, which then took me to your website. And I thought, hey, this might be exactly what I was looking for. Something to help me fill in the gaps, to make me more confident, and to help uh, get my first official Rails job. And I'm glad to say it was a success. I'm now 9 months in to a Rails role where I've had a chance to learn a whole bunch from the role, a lot in part because of the things I've learned, with you.
Awesome. So, why don't you go into a little bit of detail about your background with programming? Because I think that's important for anyone to know about if they're interested in getting into a coaching engagement and maybe want to know what to expect at their level.
I would consider myself, well, when we first met, definitely entry level. I understood programming concepts because in high school I worked with QBasic and Visual C++, a little bit of HTML, and I had a chance to teach others as well as a teacher thing. But that would have been probably 15 years time had passed before I started my coding journey again. And I met you a little bit into that. I've had some client work where I kind of figured out some things on the go. So I was still relatively new. I could pattern recognition or recognize patterns from a tutorial on a blog post, but maybe I didn't need a blog post. I needed X. So then I would just modify it and then figure it out as I went.
Yeah, great. And you had a couple projects under your belt that you had used that technique already, right?
Yeah, so just off the top of my head, one, two, three, probably about four projects, I think, off the top of my head, through different people before we had met.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that speaks to your enterprising attitude about the whole thing. So, yeah, I guess jumping off from that point, you were clearly motivated to, on your own, pursue this. What was the big factor that made you want to reach out for a mentor or a guide at that point in your journey as a Rails developer?
Truthfully, I was looking for like a shortcut. I see people who go to a coding boot camp and then obviously results may vary, but they graduate boot camp and now they have a job. And I felt, probably incorrectly, but I felt, well, the only difference between them and me is that they had the contacts from the boot camp. Now, I've since learned that I still have more to learn. They were probably farther along in their coding journey. And I thought, hey, by having a mentor, I can learn some of those things and get some of those contacts or networking someone to vouch for me or someone to not vouch for me, but they would tell me why. And then those would be some direct things that I could work on. Sometimes reading the docs or watching a tutorial wasn't enough. And I knew having a person that was knowledgeable, confident, friendly would, that I could talk things about and not feel dumb afterwards. So I could have those aha moments. With working with you, I was able to have those aha moments faster and closer together.
Great. Yeah. So you found me through Twitter, and presumably you looked at some of my Twitter content that was already out there. What things about Rails Quest kind of grabbed you there at the front end and made you think I need to reach out to this guy and he can help me kind of accelerate this process?
Well, admittedly, it has been over a year, maybe even
Been a
longer
while.
than that now. It's been
Yeah.
quite some time. Uh, In fact, it may have been like 15 months or so, because it's been through two deer seasons. I
Right.
do
Yeah.
remember that. The Going off my memory, I remember you seem very knowledgeable. Your initial unique selling proposition was, hey, I can take you from Python to Rails, and you can be just as good as you are in Python, but in Rails. Or I could take you from like mid to a senior. At the time, it wasn't really geared towards someone like myself. But because of the things I had read, I thought, well, let me shoot him a DM and see if this makes sense. And we both had a nice conversation, and it seemed like it made sense on both of our ends.
Great. Yeah. So I think that's plenty of talking about the process of leading up to working with me. So now I'm kind of interested in looking back in hindsight. What parts of the process do you think you got the most out of? Like, you're really happy with how things have turned out so far, right? And I'm really excited to see what you got going for you in your future as a Rails developer. But what were the things you think you really got value out of from that process?
The first two things off the top of my head was one, having a peer that I could actually speak and interact with, because I was home alone. And my wife, she didn't care about what a model was or a view controller or any of that. So having someone that I could speak the lingo with and they would get excited about something the same way that I would. But then also pairing. I would learn a lot from how he did the pairing.
Great. Yeah, tell me more about your experience with pairing with me.
Absolutely. So I remember sometimes you drive and sometimes I would drive, and both of those were helpful, because you would talk out loud, and I could learn how you're getting from here to there. And I think pattern recognition is one of the most important skill sets needed to become a developer. So because then I can apply that to other aspects of what I needed to problem solve. Also, it was nice knowing that, okay, this thing I've been stuck on for an hour, you were also perhaps stuck on sometimes for a while. So it's not like did something completely dumb. It was, hey, this is a hard problem that even someone who has been experienced. Also, as part of pairing, I could see what a developer who's been doing this for a long time, what their process was, and they weren't Superman. They were a normal person who's just been doing this longer. Having to Google things or go to Stack Overflow, that was all part of the process. So just seeing how the sausage was made, I think, uh,
Mm,
was actually helpful. And then when I had a chance to be a little more in control, just the way you would help me, like just enough, asking questions to help me to get to that next level without doing it for me at that time.
great. Yeah. Thanks for that. So, yeah, it sounds like in the pairing process, there is that perspective of like, there's nothing magical about what we do, right? There's no special superpowers other than you just kind of you have more things memorized, maybe just by rote of doing the process a lot, and you know what tools are available, right? And so you got to see that process unfold, and like you said, you got to see what it looks like when a developer doesn't, even an experienced developer doesn't know things, which happens daily, right? And I think that helps a lot with imposter syndrome. I don't know. Did you have any experience with imposter syndrome throughout the process of becoming a Rails developer?
Every day, every day, and not as much, but it still happens regularly. I'll get to something that just seems like this should be so easy. Um, so just having someone I could turn to help me when I got stuck was helpful. But yeah, I felt imposter syndrome a lot and still feel it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot of great stuff. A great summary of your time working with me as a part of the Rails Quest program. I think I'd like to, if you would like, and if you have anything along these lines to say, what would you like to say to anyone who's considering engaging a coach of any kind, but specifically me or something like the Rails Quest program?
Great question. Well, for Rails Quest and for yourself in general, I do highly recommend it. You speak to talk a lot of in a completely unrelated field of making money online. You have people that end up, excuse me, making more money now selling the course than they did ever doing the thing that they said they did to get there. But in this case, that's not. You still code regularly. You're still knowledgeable. When new technology comes out, you know about it, and you know how to do things the older way. Um, but yeah, I do. I think for anyone that a boot camp isn't the option for, this would be the way to go. Even if they did a YouTube tutorial and then hired you as a mentor as they went through the tutorial, there's no replacement for that human feedback that they would be able to get from working with you. And even though there were times we would meet, I think early, not super early, but early, and then later in the day, it never felt like you were obligated to meet with me. I feel like we've developed a bit of a friendship. So it never felt like a business relationship, felt like a friend helping a friend, which was really helpful for my growth, right? Because you don't want, physical fitness wise, some people do really well by getting yelled at, like, hey, give me 10 more reps. But and in this case, I didn't feel that would be the best way for myself or many to learn. They don't want to get yelled at when they're typing zeros and ones into the computer. So that was hopefully answered your question.
Oh yeah, that's perfect, and appreciate it. Yeah, I mean that's definitely something I intentionally wanted to do if I was ever going to go out and mentor developers, and I've done it many times in just in my regular career, mentoring the more junior developers, and yeah, just looking back at the people who have been my mentors over time, the ones where I that really poured gasoline on the flame of my career, um, they were very patient. They were um, willing to listen. They didn't make you feel stupid when you uh, made mistakes, but they were not afraid to point it out and gently guide you back to what they thought was going to be, a better path. So yeah, and I'm glad that that came through, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I think this has been really great, and I really appreciate you coming on this call and talking about your time with Rails Quest. Are there anything else that you'd like to add?
Other than do it, sign up for it. You know, at the very least, if they're a little bit curious, then set up a call with you, and then I think the rest will take care of itself. They'll be glad they met you.
Great. Well, thanks. Appreciate you, Justin.